now, joined by Hall of Famer John McClain. Covers more than the NFL. He covers sports and is a huge fan. And by the way, John, I got your text about Sawyer Robertson and not running much. Someone said they saw him walking around in a walking boot or whatever, but I don't think of anything that does seem to be too serious.
Well, he's sure not running as much or as well as he did early in the season when he was a force. And by the way, I do 13 weekly talk shows around the country, and I've been telling all of them about the great college game that's going to be played this weekend in Texas, and they all are fired up about it. I told them Baylor's going to finish its winning streak and keep Kansas from being bowl eligible. And, oh, yeah, they're playing in College Station, too.
I knew you'd do that.
John, Jalen Pitre got hurt, which is a super bummer. He's having a great season. The Texans roller coaster of a year. I know that there's still a lot in front of them, but is there a sense that, I know there is at least among fans, that just to fast forward to the end of this, hit, Control Alt Delete, reboot it, and make sure they build the team, especially in front of CJ Stroud?
Well, first of all, after the 5-1 start, they're 2-4. Lost the downslide began when they lost on a 45-yard field goal with no time left at Green Bay. Lose to Detroit on a 52-yard field goal with no time left. And okay, you can deal with those. But when you play a 2-8 team that's only scored 20 or more points twice, and only once in the last 6 games when it's averaging 15.2 points, and you let the Titans score 32 and beat you at home, it's the worst loss of DeMeco Ryans' 2 seasons. To me, it's the most humiliating loss they've had in regular season because of where they've been standing and where the Titans have been standing. They made Will Levis look like Warren Moon and Tony Pollard look like Eddie George, and everybody is killing the Texans right now, and their offensive line is terrible, and they'll fire their coach. They won't start over because they've invested 2 number ones in left tackle Laramie Tunsil, 1 in left guard Kenyon Green, 1 in right tackle Titus Howard, 2 in the left guard Juice Scruggs, and they spent a lot of money on free agent Shaq Mason, who's only given up 9.5 sacks. So their offensive line is the reason that CJ Stroud has become so erratic. He'll make great throws, and then he'll make head-scratching throws. And I read today on ESPN where pressure up the middle gets to him faster than any quarterback in the NFL. And that's because their interior line is terrible. They go to Jacksonville coming off its bye week. They've not lost in Jacksonville since 2017. If they were to lose this game, then coming out of their bye, they play Miami here, at Kansas City, Baltimore here, and at Tennessee. Shoot, they may not win another game and go straight down the toilet.
John, what were your thoughts on Jalen Pitre's injury? It looks like it's going to be a pretty long timetable, but hurting that shoulder, just the type of year he was having and what that means for the Texans.
I'll be surprised if he comes back. They haven't said that's the case. It's a slightly torn pectoral muscle. They told us it was a shoulder during the game. Then they said the chest, but it's the pec. Now, if he has surgery, he's done for the year. And he had been moved into the nickel, and he was playing really, really well. And him being out forced the guy, Eric Murray, to have to play safety when safety Jimmy Ward took Petre's place in the nickel, and Murray cost them 2 touchdowns, which is not his fault because he's a special teamer. And so it's interesting. Pitre helped the Texans lead the league in pressures and tackles for loss, and they're on a roll right now. Almost on the 42 sacks, team record's 46, and yet they've given up the most touchdown passes in the league, 24, which makes no sense, but it shows, and their corners are good, but it shows you how bad their safeties have been. And I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is going to play. He's missed the last 2 games with a left shoulder injury. If I had a quarterback with a bad shoulder, I wouldn't want him going up against Daniil Hunter, who's had 5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss in the last 2 games, or Will Anderson Jr., who had 2 sacks, another one called back in his first game after missing 2. I think I'd put Mac Jones out there.
I saw a note about what Kansas City has won, half of their games on the last actual play of the game, and they are still, you don't take away wins, you don't take them for granted. But do they understand as a team that they're not playing at that level to win a 3rd straight Super Bowl if they don't get some things together?
I think they do know that, David. Last year they lost 6 games in regular season, finished 11-6. They've lost 1. Now, when they got to the playoffs, they turned it on. They beat Baltimore. I think they beat Buffalo, and then they beat San Francisco in the Super Bowl. And but they are winning in some interesting ways. And I was asked to contribute to a thing about what teams should be thankful for. And one of the things I put in there, Chiefs should be thanking God for miracles, because they've been winning some miraculous games in different ways. But right now, I think Buffalo is the best team in the AFC. And I think 2 best teams in the NFC are Detroit and Philly. If it comes down to it in the championship games, if the favorites make it, and we know that's not likely, it would be Kansas City and Buffalo, where the Chiefs always win in the playoffs, and then Philly at Detroit. And I would love to see the Lions in the Super Bowl. And your Commanders, as you know, have gone straight down the toilet.
Yeah.
And that game the other day with 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, the Cowboys' last touchdown on the onside kick reminded me of when Baylor played Penn State in the Cotton Bowl. Same thing happened. Penn State took an onside kick back like that. It's so unusual. But there's really the competition besides Philly. The main competition for the Lions is in its own division. They play Minnesota in the last game, and there's nobody from the West, nobody from the South who's worth a darn. It's like an AFC. Nobody from the South's worth a darn. But there's not one. I guess if I had to pick one great one, I'd say it's Detroit. And then when I watched Baltimore, like last night, with their offense and their running game, they're capable of beating anybody. But their defense, they have given up the 2nd most touchdown passes behind the Texans. So their defense has been suspect. That's why the Ravens have 4 losses.
John, why do the Cowboys don't have the decency to be either really, really good and elite or really, really crappy?
It doesn't seem fair, doesn't it? They're never bad enough to get a quarterback. And I'm not so sure this is the year you want to be that bad. The Cowboys, and I'll tell you, I've watched Boise State 5 times because I want to watch running back Ashton Jennings. He went to high school right there where the Cowboys facility is. And if the Cowboys are able to get Ashton Jennings and give them the kind of running game they've been missing out on guys like Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon and Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs would have been worth it, because that kid, I've told you guys before, what he's doing at Boise State reminds me of what Barry Sanders did at Oklahoma State, although Jenny is bigger and stronger. So I think the Cowboys, they need to hit on these picks. It's one bad year. People act like, oh, my God, the Cowboys are terrible when they won 12 games 3 years in a row. They're disappointing in the playoffs, of course. But this is the one bad year. And Jerry Jones doesn't like it. I don't know what he can do about it except step away. And that's not going to happen. So you just hope that they realize they got to get a running game next year. And hopefully they can be healthy on defense, because they certainly have the special teams right now.
So, John, 3 games on Thanksgiving Day. Also got the Black Friday game, Raiders at the Chiefs. But of the trio, Detroit Bears, Dallas and the Giants, and Green Bay and the Dolphins, which one is the most appetizing for you on Thanksgiving Day?
Lambeau Field. Playing Thursday night where it could be snowing. I love that game in Cleveland on Monday night. Everybody loves snow. They don't like wind and rain, but they love snow. Winter wonderland. and that's the way it could be at Lambeau. I think it's not calling for snow right now, but seeing if Miami and Tua Tagovailoa can go on the road and make that passing game work the way it has been since he came back from his concussion is going to be so exciting. I like watching the Bears because, you know, they got Caleb Williams is coming off a really good game. He can play. I don't know if the Lions are going to blow him out or not, but I'm interested in that one. I'll be interested much more in the Cowboys. Now, usually I take a nap. I don't take a nap until the Cowboys are over. This might be a good time to take a nap. But if Drew Lock plays for the Giants instead of Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets, or whatever they call him, it would be a much more interesting game. And if Turpin could get his hands on the ball about 10 times every game, it would be more exciting. But it'll still draw the biggest audience.
I'm a lifelong Washington fan like your wife, and I had a bad feeling about it. I think, as you mentioned earlier, the Commanders are running out of gas. But that was as bizarre when he hit McClain, and then they missed the extra point. Just crazy, that rivalry. Even now, both teams are not very good, but that was nuts on Sunday. Nuts.
I thought, sure, when he hit the long touchdown pass, Washington was going to win that game, and then the freakish kickoff return for a touchdown, and then the last one. It was just, I think that's the first time it's ever happened in the fourth quarter in NFL history, isn't it?
Oh, great. That's
You made history.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the good
By
news.
the way, David, do you know why yesterday was a big day?
No, sir.
Neither did my wife. It was Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs celebrated his 84th birthday.
Wow. He's one of the only people in my life that I actually was nervous when I interviewed him. One, it was a time restraint. I had to walk around the Radio Row with him, with his handler. And the other one was Jim Brown, who sat down at the table at Radio Row one year and looked at me, and I almost like peed in my pants because he's such an intimidating figure.
And you're right. I felt the same way about Jim Brown. First time I was in a room with him at the Hall of Fame, I'm like, oh, my God, I'm standing in here in the same room with Jim Brown. I got to act like a badass like him. One time when my wife's parents, who didn't care about any sport, they lived in D.C. except the Redskins. All they cared about was politics. They'd come stay with us and watch C-SPAN and CNN, and my wife's the same way. Well, one time I came in from the Texans. It was about 10 p.m., and as I'm walking up to our door, I can see my wife's on a landline, and my in-laws are on cells, and they're all so excited about something. And I'm like, oh, my God, what's happened? I opened the door, and I said to her dad, and he never got excited about anything. I said, so what's going on? And he covers it, and he goes, Joe Gibbs is coming back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
I'm going to bed. He gave him one pretty good year. I remember he beat Parcells or something like that in the late game to get in the playoffs. And so, but oh, well. John.
I know, right quick, I know your listeners don't want to hear any more about the Redskins, but the fact is, if you go back and look at almost every team that won multiple Super Bowls, every coach had a great quarterback except one. Joe Gibbs won with three quarterbacks who will never be mentioned in the same sentence as Super Bowl, which might make him the greatest coach in history.
Absolutely. Joe Theismann, Doug Williams, and Mark Rippon, and that 91 team was explosive.
Hell to the Redskins.
Absolutely. Thank you, buddy. Have a great Thanksgiving, John. You too.
Guys.
John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with many things NFL nuggets throughout the last what we see now.